Hi everyone, welcome to today's creature feature. My name is Danny and I'm joined here by Brittany and Caitlin. We're animal care professionals here at Assiniboine Park Zoo. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite species, the bison. So the bison are one of my favorite species for a number of different reasons, but probably the number one reason is that they're a really great conservation success story. So a little bit of backstory about these guys. Historically, they used to number in the range of about 30 million to 60 million individuals, and they used to live all the way from Alaska to the Gulf of Mexico. But in around the 1800s, due to overharvesting, their numbers were dropped down to just around 15,000, which is a huge drop. So a number of people took the initiative and tried to breed them back into existence, and now today they're actually living in the wild in a number of different spots in protected parks in Canada, the United States, and in Mexico. So they're a really great conservation story, and they're also just really cool animals. So there's a lot of really interesting things about them. They're one of our herd species here, so taking care of herd species is a lot different than taking care of some of the more individual animals. Everything they do has to kind of be all together or not at all sort of thing. So when we're shifting out the bison first thing in the morning onto the field for their morning breakfast, they are getting, they follow a very strict pecking order. So basically a pecking order means that they follow an order of whoever's the biggest and has the biggest personality goes first, and whoever's the smallest and has the smallest personality goes last. So our biggest personality and our biggest bison is Blizzard, who is over there. He is our white bison. A lot of people think that he is an albino bison, but that's actually not true. He's more of just a blonde bison. It's just a color variation that they have. He's a really cool guy. He weighs probably around 1,500 pounds or so, give or take. So he's a pretty big guy. Bison are actually the biggest land mammal in North America. They range from about 700 pounds to anywhere upwards of 2,000 pounds. So they're very large animals. You might notice they also have really long curved horns. Those are about a foot long or 12 inches or so. They use those horns for protection from predators. These guys are preyed upon by cougars, wolves, bears, and also humans. But one of the things they do with their horns, they will work together as a herd and they will form a protective circle around smaller, more vulnerable members of the herd like calves and younger females. So they basically make an impenetrable wall of horns, which is pretty cool. So bison have some pretty cool adaptations in order to live in extremely different, harsh environments. So like I said before, they're found all the way from Alaska and the Yukon to the Gulf of Mexico. So they can handle both extreme cold temperatures and extreme heat. So right now you might notice they look pretty fluffy. They grow a really thick winter coat. It's about 6 inches thick in some spots, and that protects them from the extreme winds and the extreme snow. So they actually stay so warm in the winter that when we come out onto areas where they've been sleeping at night, they'll actually have holes melted into the ice because they're so hot. And then they come the spring, so right around now you'll actually start to see them losing their hair. So if you look closely, you might see a few little missing patches of hair on some of them. We give them the opportunity to rub up on different items such as logs and trees, and we actually have a big scrub brush, so that's one of their absolute favorite. In the wild, they'd be rubbing up on trees and rocks, as well as digging in or rolling in wallows. So they are really well adapted for living in extreme climates all throughout North America.
We have some great questions here. We can talk a bit about the herd dynamic. We have a question asking, are they ever mean to each other? So do they get along? How do they interact?
That's a great question. So they do get along with each other, but it is part of their herd dynamic that they're constantly kind of challenging each other to see where they stand on that dynamic. So right now at the top, and probably who's going to always be at the top, is Blizzard. He is the biggest, he is the most boisterous, so he kind of gets first say at food, and he kind of directs things depending on if there's other issues going on. Right after him is a bison named Wilma. Wilma is actually just over here to the left of Blizzard. Wilma is our oldest bison of the group. She is around just over 20 years old. She's not actually the biggest or the toughest, but it's one of those things where she's just kind of like the matriarch of the group and all the others really respect her. After Wilma is Barkley, this one over here. She's really easy to point out because she has curved horns that go down. She also has a really black face and black body. She is definitely, after Blizzard, is the biggest personality. You'll often see her kind of shooing other bison away so she can get first dibs at the food. And then we have Minnie, or Prairie First, who's actually one of our biggest ones, who's in the back, but she's very, very shy compared to Barkley and Blizzard, so she's not as up there. And then closer on the bottom we have Minnie, and then over in the far back is Dandy. Those are that's kind of the pecking order that they follow right now. So this one here is Minnie.
Some people are asking how old they all are.
So they have a bunch of different age ranges in age. So the oldest, like I said, is Wilma. She is over 20 years old. Minnie, Barkley, and Blizzard are in kind of their late teens, and then Dandy and Prairie just turned 9.
Question here, how heavy are they?
How heavy are they? That's a good one. So Blizzard, we don't know exactly for sure because we don't really have a scale big enough to weigh them at this moment. But Blizzard, we're estimating anywhere around 1,500 pounds or so. The smaller ones, so basically like Minnie, probably weigh under 1,000, maybe 800 or 900 pounds or so.
What would a bison do for fun or for play?
Bison love to smash things. They love to use their horns and they love to tip things. Anything they have that's a new object, say like a big ball or a big, one of their favorite toys is a big wooden spool. I find that because they don't really have the best eyesight, an object that's really far out there, they might not know what the heck it is, so they really like to just go out and explore, and they get very excited and like to just roll stuff around when they get the chance. They also love to flip over logs and trees and that sort of thing.
A few people have asked us, what's the difference between a bison and a buffalo?
That is an awesome question. So a buffalo is actually a different animal totally than a bison. So there are two different types of buffalo, Cape buffalo and Asiatic water buffalo. They're from Africa and Asia. Bison are bison. These guys are bison here. But the naming kind of came from when Europeans first came over, and they just kind of gave these guys the name buffalo because that was something they'd seen in the past. So they are two different species, but yeah, that's just kind of where it came from, was the different name there. So
somebody was asking, would a bison be related to a muskox?
They are, but pretty distantly. So even though they look kind of similar, they do have the same kind of curved horns. Muskox are actually a little bit closer related to goats. So because they are both ruminant animals, they both eat different types of grasses, they both are ungulates, they have even-toed hooves. They're all part of the same family, but they're not too closely related. These guys are closer related to cattle, yaks, and yeah, like buffalo and other animals like that.
We had a great question here from, I believe, Chase and Crew, who are asking what kind of enrichment we give to bison.
Chase and Crew, that is a great question. So one of their favorite things to do for enrichment is to rub on things. So in the back we actually have a big scratch post they love to rub on. They also love trees and branches. So in the summer, when our arborists are doing lots of pruning around the park and the zoo, we give that to these guys. One of their absolute favorites is willow. They will just go absolutely nuts for willow branches.
We have a few questions about what they eat and what they're eating now and how much they eat in a day.
Sure, yeah. So what they're eating right now is they're just basically some treats. So they're getting some romaine lettuce, some carrots, some apples, and a little bit of banana. These are basically just treats for them. They really enjoy these. They're just kind of something extra. Throughout the day, they're going to be getting about 4 kilograms of pellets, of ruminant pellets. It's a special pellet that's designed for ruminating animals, so animals that eat a lot of grasses and things like that. And for hay, they get about 2 bales of hay every day, and that's probably about, how much do you think that weighs, Brittany?
Sorry?
How much do you think a bale of hay weighs? Yeah, in kilos. Probably 10, 20 kilos. Yeah.
Maybe 15.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Somewhere around there. And that's of hay. So they're primarily grass eaters. They eat grasses and sedges in the wild.
We have a question here asking, what are they trained for? Do they do any positive reinforcement training with the bison?
Yeah, we do positive reinforcement training with basically every animal here at the zoo. So we do a lot of different behaviors. In the past, we've worked on voluntary injection training. So a few of them, like Barkley and Blizzard, have got that down. They're pretty good at that. We're also working on separating them for different procedures. So like I said before, because they're a herd animal, they're really comfortable when they're with each other. But when they're separate, they can get a little bit stressed out. So we're working on making sure that they're okay being separated into smaller groups in case they ever get an injury or need any extra medication or that sort of thing. That way we can give it to them in a stress-free environment.
Great. A few questions about what their lifespan is.
So in the wild, they live anywhere from 10 to 15 years. In a zoo, anywhere from 20 to 30 is kind of the average lifespan for a bison. Yeah.
Okay, curveball question for you guys. Who is your favorite bison?
Oh, that is tough.
I think mine is Minnie.
So Brittany says hers is Minnie. That is a good one. Minnie does get a lot of extra attention because she's one of the smaller ones, and she's a little older and she's lower on the pecking order. We do actually have to give her a little bit of extra food every day, so she gets a little bit of extra attention. Caitlin, who's your favorite?
Barkley.
Barkley is Caitlin's favorite. Can you tell us why, Caitlin?
Attitude.
Yeah, she does have a little bit of an attitude, so she's pretty fun. Yeah. For me, it's kind of a toss-up for either Prairie or Dandy. I think that they're both just really good-looking bison, and they just have really nice personalities.
We had a question, what's the difference between antlers and horns? And then another one asking, how big can their horns grow?
That's a really good question. So basically how big their horns can grow, their horns get about the size of Blizzard's here and not that much bigger. So they're maybe about a foot in length. The difference between a horn and an antler is that deer grow antlers, whereas all other kind of ruminating animals, so bison, cattle, goats, sheep, they grow horns. Antlers are shed on an annual basis, so they will lose them and then regrow them again, whereas horns will not regrow. The bison horn's kind of interesting. They have the outside, the long part is actually a sheath. If Minnie's around, yeah, Minnie's over on this side. Minnie actually lost her outside sheath, so underneath you can see that's kind of like what the actual horn itself is. That's actually kind of like a quick. I don't know if anybody who has ever cut dog nails, the quick is kind of a little blood vessel inside that will bleed if you nick it. So without her horn sheath, she kind of has just the quick of her horn exposed.
We have a great question here. What's the funniest thing you've ever seen the bison do?
So the funniest thing I've ever seen them do, we had last year we had an enrichment item that was put in. It was a large rolling hay feeder that I have never seen Blizzard react so strongly to. Blizzard is anywhere around 1,500 pounds or so. For an animal that big to be literally prancing with all 4 feet off the ground was pretty amazing to see. He was very excited about it, and I thought it was hilarious.
A question here from Claire, 8 years old. Do they ever charge at the fence? Do bison charge?
Claire, that's a really good question. I personally have never seen them charge at the fence, but it is certainly something that they can do. That is one of the things that bison are very well adapted to do. It is an anti-predator defense to charge at predators potentially. So the guys that we have, they're really comfortable working with us and being around close to us. So yeah, there's really no reason for them to charge the fence. So yeah.
If there's anything else you want to add, Danny, if not, I think we're going to start to wrap up.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in today and checking out our bison herd. They're a really great animal. They're awesome to watch. They're such a great conservation story. So yeah, I just want to say thanks for everyone tuning in today.